the UN Indico registration system, and that is being used for the upcoming second UN Sustainable Transport Conference. We are delighted that so many of you are joining. My name is Lotta Tähtinen, and I'm the Chief of the Outreach and Partnerships Branch in the DESA Division for Sustainable Development Goals. And our division is very pleased to be acting as the Secretariat for the Sustainable Transport Conference. Today, we have with us the Indico team, who is managing the registration platform in Geneva, in Switzerland. They will be giving us a presentation, an in-depth presentation about Indico, how the platform works. We also have our dear colleague, Ms. Waitak Chua from UN Protocol Office in New York, joining this call for any additional questions that delegations may have. So we hope that this informational webinar will be useful to all of you as you are preparing your delegations participation in the Sustainable Transport Conference. Just as a reminder, this conference will of course be held from 14 to 16 October in Beijing, with very limited in-person participation by individuals who are already in Beijing. For these individuals, we would expect them to be registered by their respective missions so that they can be issued a grounds pass to enter the conference premises. All other participants, those who are attending the conference virtually, will not need to pre-register for the conference. Instead, they will be able to follow the conference proceedings online via Zoom streaming, as well as through UN webcast that will be made available through the conference website. So with these very few short introductory remarks, it's now my great pleasure to invite our colleague Da from UN in Geneva, who is coordinating the Indico platform, to give us a presentation about the platform. Da, over to you, please.
Thank you, Lotta. Thank you. So my name is Da Samaitwanzete. They call me Da. I'm part of the Indico team in Geneva, and we are part of the team that actually maintain and kind of develop the platform for the DGACN. First of all, one word about Indico. Indico started in 2015, started first of all in Geneva, and then an initiative of DGACM, and it became part of Umoja Extension 2 for meeting participants and conference management at the secretariats, at the UN secretariats. Indico currently has been used by many different organizations outside the UNHQ in New York. We are still working to make sure that Indico works for New York, especially the protocol and the delegates registration. So currently you have Vienna, we are onboarding ESCAP, we have Nairobi, Yunnan, UNECA, that's onboarding, Geneva, WHO, and many other agencies, ILO, and so forth. So it's kind of the global UN family using Indico, and very soon it will be coming to New York as well. That's for Indico. So Indico helps with managing a conference and also managing participants. So one of the objective of this presentation is really to show you how you as a focal point can use Indico to register your delegates. And if there is any question later, do not hesitate to just ask your questions, any difficulty, we are here to help. Next slide, Yarina. So what we wanted to do is to kind of give you an overview of the process. let's say I'm a focal point, and what should I do? What are the steps that I should take or that will be on my way to registering my delegates? As a focal point, the step number one, you will need to create an account on Indico. That's a one-time action. Once you create your account on Indico, you write to the support, the Indico support email. You as a focal point will be granted focal points access to manage your participants or your delegates. That's the step number one. The step number two is something that you will need to do, which is to gather the information you need from the delegates. So the photo, the passport information, and the note verbal. Step number three, that's where you start registering your delegates. Now that you gather the information that you need, you start filling out the form, and then you submit each form by clicking on apply. The step number four, you will receive an email notification once or you will be sent an email to inform you of the status of the delegates, if approved or not, or still pending. Matter of fact, you can even log back into Indico and see the status of your delegates. So those are the four steps that we will cover during this presentation. Next slide. So let's start with step number one, which is your account creation. I'm the focal point. What do? I go to Indico. I have the URL over there on the left corner. And then on the home page, I will see on the top right, the login button. I just click on it. Next slide. If you click on the login, you will land on a login page, right? Indico will ask you to log in if you already have an account, or just to create a new one. So in my case, I will create a new account. So once I click on create a new account, Indico will ask me to enter my email. So that's the first thing I need to provide. So I enter my email. Please, guidelines from PLS, from protocol, enter the email that you use in e-registrations. So here I will enter my email address, the email address that I use in e-registration. And then in step two, in number two, I click on send me a verification email. This is just to verify that you are a real human, you are not a robot or something like that. So once you enter your email as in e-registration, then you click on send me a verification email. Next. Once you click on send me a verification email, you will actually receive an activation, or I would say a verification email, a verification link. So you click on that link. Once you click on the link, you will be transferred to the form that you see on the right of the screen of the presentation. And that's where you enter your information, first name, last name, password, and just make sure that the password that you select is strong enough. So you will see on the number one points there, you will see all the requirements. It contains, a number and those kind of things. So sometimes you cannot create an account just because the password does not meet all the minimum security requirements. And then you have a CAPTCHA. Most of the time it's kind of an addition. You have to put the result in the CAPTCHA field, the sum in the CAPTCHA field, to make sure you are a human as well, not a robot or a script. And you click finally on number 3, you click on create my Indico profile. Once you do that, it will create your Indico profile. Next. So focal point access. Let's say now I've done the step, I'm almost at the end of the step 1. I created my account. I've activated the account. I need the proper rights to start registering my delegates, right? So one of the things that you will need to do is to write to the Indico support. The email is on the presentation there. And when you write to the Indico support, we provide you with the templates. You will need just to specify the meeting, the country, and then the email. That's just an example of how you could present it. And then you send it to us. What will happen is we will grant you the proper right, the focal points right. Once it's done, we confirm with an email saying, Mrs. or Mr. So-and-so, you've been granted focal points right for this country on this conference and for this email address. So that's basically the step one, creation of accounts and granting focal points right or access on the system. And that's a one-time exercise. Next. So step two, if you remember well, it was about gathering information. Me as a focal point, now that I've been granted the focal point access, I need to gather my delegates' information, right? The photos, the passport details, the note verbal. So I gather all the information that I need to fill out the form, the registration form. Next. Could you come back to the, yes. Here, I just wanted to say the photo, remember that the photo will be printed on the badge. So try to ask delegates to provide a photo that's suitable for the badge and so forth. So just to let you know, I'm sure you already have experience with that. So just a reminder. Next.
Dov, if I may jump in, perhaps we could take questions as they arise as you are going through this presentation. I already see a hand up by Sophie. Sophie, do you have a question to Dov about what he has just outlined so far?
Yes, so just to make sure, we upload information for the delegate who will participate in person in Beijing, right?
Correct.
The delegate.
Correct. Only those delegations who are participating in person and who will need to be issued a conference badge will need to be registered through the Indico portal by the New York registration focal point.
So step two is only the person who's going to be in person there. Who do we send the note verbal to? Who is it addressed to, the note verbal?
The note verbal is addressed to the protocol service in New York.
So to Ms. White-Akshua.
Correct.
Correct. And
do you have a sample? Do you have a sample of his nonverbal?
White-Ak,
we just put the name of the person.
White-Ak, would you like to turn your camera and perhaps answer the question about the note verbal?
Okay, my camera is on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Because last time I had a problem on Zoom. Sophie, the note verbal actually should be addressed to the Chief of Protocol, Ms. Beatrix Kanya. In terms of the format or the template of the note verbal, it's up to each missions because every mission has their different style of writing. So it's a very standard note verbal. It should come from the permanent mission in New York, informing the Chief of Protocol that the delegation is attending the GSTC conference. It's a very simple note verbal, just including the members of the delegations with their names and functional title. And another note verbal is also needed for collection of the badges. I guess I can touch upon this maybe at a later stage when we get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
White-Ak, for that clarification. And again, Sophie, obviously, this will require your close coordination with your embassy in Beijing to receive the information about the in-person participants and their details. Again, only those delegates who are attending the conference in person inside the venue will need to be registered through the Indico system. I see another hand up from USA, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and apologies for interrupting. But going back to step one and the email to the Indico support, is that going to be needed for every conference going forward, or are we registering individual focal points per meeting? Thank you.
Da, would you like to address that?
Yeah, very, very good point. No, I would say this is a one-time. So once you create your account, when you create your account, it's a one-time action, and then you on Indico, we can later on kind of add you as add all the focal points as default focal points for any New York organized events. The only thing is sometimes the list changes, the list of focal points changes. And in that case, the new person will have to create his or her account and then follow the same steps. Or if someone left, no longer works for that mission, we will have to remove the person from the focal points list in Indico, but it's a one-time shot. Currently, this is the first time that PLS, at least protocol, is using Indico for delegates registration on Indico. Very soon, we will include all the feedback that we receive to have the platform really work more closely to their needs, matching really their needs. So definitely it's a one-shot action. So next time, no longer need to create an account and so forth. So if there is a conference managed by New York, no longer need to create your account. You will just log in and start registering your participants. Over to you.
I see a hand up from Yvonne from the Indonesia mission. Yvonne, over to you. Yvonne, you are on mute.
Yeah, hi, this is Yvonne of Mission Indonesia. I have already registered to Indico, I think it was September 29, and have been granted the right to access the website on Indico. But until now, I still won't be able to register. Please advise. Thank you.
Da, would you like to address that? I think, Da, you are on mute.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Yvonne. So if I understand well, Yvonne, you've created your account, you've created your profile, you've sent an email to the support, they granted you access as a focal point. Now you would like to know how to start registering your delegates. And that's the thing that we will see next in the slides. We'll see that together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So perhaps we can now return back to the slideshow and address this very particular point that Yvonne had raised. So Yarina, back to the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Yarina. Thank you, Lotta, for that. So how to register the, come again? Should I continue? We good? Okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So how to register my delegates now that, let's say, sorry, Yvonne, I will use your case, right? Now that me, Yvonne, I got my rights, my focal points right. I created my profile and I got my focal points right. So I go to the event page. So the link is there as well, the event registration page. And I click on login, the number 1. If you already logged in, you will see your name will be on the top right. You will not see login. You will not see the button, the login button. You will just see your name on the top right, displayed on the top right. If you're not logged in, you will see login. So you click on login. If you're not logged in, just to log in. Indico will ask you to enter your email and password. You do that, and then you click on the pencil on top, number 2. So the pencil will actually allow you to go to the backend. That's where you register your delegates. Next slide. So the backend looks like this. And basically you will have, the way you know you are in the backend, the most obvious indicator is this blue button that reads switch to display view, which simply means that switch to the view that participants or delegates will see, the public view. So when you see that button, it means that you are in the backend. The main menus are on the left. And the menu that's important to us right now is the menu registration. So you will click on that menu, registration, the link registration. Next slide. To manage your registrations. So here, as you can see for this conference, we have different registration forms. We have one for media, we have one for member states, and also for host country. So if you are a host country focal points, you will click on the host country registrations. If you are the member states, you will click on the member states one. In any case, if you are not the focal points for host country, you will not be able to see any data or any information anyway. So only the member states, only the focal, if you are focal points for a specific registration, you will be able to actually perform some actions there, register your delegates there. So in our case, let's say I am Yvonne and I'm a focal point for member states. So I will just go and click on registrations in front of the member states registration form. Next slide. Once I click on that, and this is an example that the screenshot that I took to let you see how it will look like. So you will have the name, and I think I chose, if I'm not mistaken, Turkey as a country. So Turkey has already registered a few delegates and they were approved. So basically on the screen, you will see the name, first name, last name. I've hidden it. And you will see the status, the column status, if they are approved, if they are still pending. So you can actually directly see from Indico the status of your delegates. And you will see all the other information you need, the note verbal, if it's attached, and so forth. So before we get there, we want to register. We said that we want to register participants. Yvonne wants to register a delegate. So you click on the registrant action. And then number 2, you click on add registrant. So those are the 2 steps. Registrant actions is kind of a toolbox. That's where you have the buttons. So if you click on it, it will display the buttons. You can actually add a registrant. You can send an email to a registrant or a delegate or the registered delegates. So I would say you click on add registrant next, because that's what we want to do. When I click on add registrant, I land on the form that I need to fill out. So this is a screenshot of the form. That's where you will start uploading the information you gathered, entering the information you gathered. So the photo, the type, the first name, last name, functional title, capacity, and you will see that the mandatory fields are marked with an asterisk. Right. Next. I would like to point out specific mandatory fields, especially the email one. So you will find an email field. That email field is for you, is actually for the delegate's email. If the delegate doesn't have an email address, or if you don't know the delegate's email address, you can use a temporary one, and we give you here in the guideline what to do. So first name dot last name at mailinator.com. So that's basically a workaround that we provide. Why do we provide this workaround? Because in Indico, a registration as well as an account is recognized, or I would say identified by an email. So that's why when you fill out the registration form, you will have for each delegate a different email here, because Indico kind of ID each registration by the email. So in your case, when you fill out the form, again, if you have the delegate email, you can use it, or if you don't want to use it, or if he doesn't or she doesn't have the email, or you don't know it, you can still use a temporary one, first name dot last name at mailinator. Once you finish filling out the form, you can just click on register at the bottom of the form to submit the registration.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps
yes.
we can take a quick break here. I see some more questions. So, Sophie, you have a hand up.
Hi, thank you. It's just like when I try to register my only participant, I cannot put his email address. I have to put my email address. So why do you ask for the delegate's email address if we cannot put him? Because you only accept the user, you only accept my address because I'm the only person registered, but I'm already logged in. So I don't know why you don't accept the person email.
Okay. So this is the case.
Does it make sense?
I think I understand the case, right? The use case that you are in. It means that you don't have the focal points right yet. You are not granted the focal points right yet. So you've created your account, but you still need to ask us to grant you the focal points right. Once you have the focal points right, you will be able to go to the backend, and that's where you do the registration. And in the email field, you should be able to add any email. And sometimes when you enter an email, there is a small message that reads, this email is not associated with any Indico account or something like that. It's just an indication. Don't panic. You can just discard that message and continue filling out the form.
But I have the rights because you said you can only register someone if you have the right. So I have access to it. So I can put the information, and I've already requested the rights. So it's just a mistake from the system to say like, oh, this is not an Indico account. I should not. I should still put the delegate's email. Although they send me an error message, I should still put his address, not mine.
I would say the email fields should not be your email address. It should be his email address or her email address. If you don't have his or her email address, put the temporary one.
But they say.
And once
of course
you
I have his email address. My point is, when I put it, they say it's not recognized. But of course, it's not recognized because he's not registered. He's going to be an in-person participant, so he's not registered in the system because it needs my help to register him. But when I put his email, they say, "Oh, so I don't understand the logic of it." So shall I bypass it and still leave his address, although I get an error message?
Very good point, Sophie. This is the logic. The reason why the system tells you, actually the system doesn't prevent you from registering. It just gives you an indication that this email is not, it's not linked to any account. Or if you put an email that already has an account, it will say this email already has is linked to an account that exists in Indico. Why is that? Because participants or delegates have an history. So the system will try to attach this new registration to the delegate's history. Let's say you have a delegate in Geneva who already used Indico in the past and now works in New York. If you try to register that delegate, the system will say these accounts already exist in the system, just for you to know. And then the system will attach the registration to the delegate's history. So that when YTAC looks at the history of the delegates, she can see all the registration, including yours. So the message is basically, that's basically the logic, just to let you know that, okay, this delegate already has an account. This one doesn't have an account yet. So that's basically the logic. Yeah.
So essentially,
because we never had to.
So essentially, Sophie, you can just ignore that that message,
that error message,
and just go ahead and use the email of the individual you are registering, and ignore the message that Indico is giving. May I just make a quick point here that we will be sharing this PowerPoint presentation on the conference website, so that you will be all able to go back to the PowerPoint, revisit it, and look at all the screens as you are looking for to refresh your memory of what Da has presented. Sophie, you have another question.
I'm sorry, last question regarding this email address. So if I put his email address, he's going to receive the confirmation. You know, with eDelegate, we ever receive a confirmation that someone has been registered. So he will receive the confirmation that it's been registered in person, and I won't receive that confirmation.
Very good point,
Who
Sophie.
will receive the confirmation?
Very, very good question, Sophie. And I think it's not your last question. I would like you to ask as many questions as you need, because they are interesting and they help all the other colleagues also. So if you put his or her email, they will receive the confirmation. But behind the scene, when YTAC approves, she will also send the confirmation to you, because she can see who did the registration, the on behalf registration. So she will do that manually. Now, in the next version of the system, we will have a configuration that says, do not send the confirmation to the delegate, sends it directly to the focal points. For now, it's not there yet. But basically, that's the workflow. Yeah. Over to you.
Thank you so much.
Yvonne, I still see a hand up from you. Is that a previous hand, or do you have a question still at this stage? So maybe you can just lower your hand if you have no questions. Perhaps we can now go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Yarina and Da.
Thank you, Lotta. Thank you, Yarina. Again, if you have any question, there is no stupid question. We are here to help. So please do not hesitate to let us know. Once you submit the registration, and that comes to Lotta's question, an email of acknowledgement will be sent to the email that you mentioned. But also, once the registration is approved, or once the status changes, you as a focal point will be sent an email. So YTAC will send you an email for confirmation that your delegate has been approved, and you will be able to receive that confirmation email as well. So this slide was put there to answer your question. But let's say you go to Indico, you see that your delegate is approved, but you as a focal point, you haven't received an email yet. What are the things that you can do? You can, first of all, check your spam or junk folder, just to make sure it's not there. You haven't received it and it's in the junk or spam folder. And then next step, if it's not there, you could write to the support, the Indico support email address, and then we will let you know if it's an issue or if we need to resend it to you. So that's basically the workflow. We had many instances where, I would say in the past 5 years, where some of the emails could be in the spam. So just check your spam before you actually contact us. So that's basically it. You go to Indico, you can see the status of your delegates. You can see that they are approved and YTAC approved them, but you haven't received any email. So you check your spam. If it's not there, you can contact us and then we can resend it to you if needed.
If I can jump in, there is a question from Yvonne, who is saying that she has actually tried to put the email of her participant, and she's getting a message from the Indico saying that the email address is invalid. Could you advise, is she still able to finalize processing the registration, or what should she do in this instance?
I think if the email is invalid, maybe it's an email with, after the at, you may have a series of letters and then dot, maybe 3 letters after that, and maybe dot, and then 2 letters after that. And we need to have a look at the email. So Yvonne, maybe after this call, if we can reach out to you and look at the email that you're trying to use, because when the system says the email is invalid, it means that the way the email is written, maybe there is something missing, or there is a special character that should not be there or something like that. So maybe we'll have a look at the email after this call, if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I would send it the email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Yvonne. Let's continue the presentation.
Okay. So now that's how you actually, Yarina, if you could go back to this slide. So once you do that, you finish the workflow. You created your account. That's a one-time thing that you do. You get your access as a focal point, one-time thing, and then you start just registering. So you log in, you go to the registration part, you click on add registrants, you start filling out the form, you submit by clicking on register, you receive some email notifications after the delegates has been approved. You can actually go back to Indico just to check the status of your delegates and so forth. So it's basically the workflow. That's it. And then you repeat for each one. And that's how you register your delegates. Now, we thought that it would be very useful to address a few points. And one of them, you will see, you actually asked a question before. I think Sophie asked a question. So next slide, Karina. So one of the points that I thought would be useful is also the fact that how do you log in? You go to the top right where your name will be displayed. You click on your name, you will see a menu, and then you could just, I said log in, log out. And then you can just click on log out to log out. That's it. Another important button is I would say the show and hide columns button. And that button will allow you to display certain fields, certain columns that are not displayed by default on your view. So that's also something you would like to use extensively, very useful. Next slide. Important points. When you go to the registration page or the registration website, you will see that for delegates, there is no in-person registration that's activated. So this this is just to say that only focal points can do the on behalf registration for the delegates. Whereas all the other registrations, you can see that the in-person registration can be done. Next.
Actually, Da, this addresses the question that Luella from the Lesotho mission has. She's raising particularly this point, saying that the member state category is not showing active. So how can she start registering?
Very good question, Noella, I think. So if that's your case, you would just follow the steps. So once you created your account, we need to give you the focal points right. If you already got the focal points right, what you do is you will follow the steps in this presentation. As Lotta mentioned, we will share it with you. So you log in, and then you will see the registration link. You can then go there and say, add registrant, and you start filling out the form and submitting. So it's that easy, that simple. So the thing that you need to check to make sure of is, first, you create your account, and the steps are actually described in the presentation. We'll share it with you. Once you created your account, once you create your account, you ask to be granted focal points, right? This is a one-time action. So you do it just once. Once you have it, for all the following meetings, if you use Indico again, you already have your account, and that's it. So once you have the focal points right, you will have I would say you will be allowed to register, to do the on behalf registration by going to the backend, add new, and then filling out the form on behalf of your delegates.
Thank you, Da. And again, as a reminder, only those representatives of delegations who will be attending this conference in person in Beijing will need to be registered through the Indico system. And of course, because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, in-person participation is only possible for individuals who are already in Beijing. So there is no travel expected for this conference. All others will be able to follow the proceedings virtually via Zoom, as well as via the UN webcast. Information to Zoom links will be shared through the e-delegate portal. I have a few additional questions, if I may. There is a question from Inga-Lena. She is saying that the automated message that is generated by the Indico system is saying there is no Indico user associated with this email, seems to come with all entries. It is confusing and should be changed. I think this is a point Da addressed earlier. It simply means that this individual has never been registered through Indico before. It's a new Indico registration, and you can just disregard that email and proceed. But perhaps this is something that the Indico team can take into consideration as you work to improve the platform further. I think this is very valuable feedback you are receiving now. There is a question from Mahdi from the Iranian delegation. It is supposed to hold this meeting in person, but according to this information, this meeting will be held virtually. It would be appreciated if you kindly clarified this issue. So Mahdi, as I mentioned, there will be very limited in-person participation by delegates who are already in Beijing to attend this conference in person inside the conference venue. It is only these individuals who need to be registered through this Indico platform, as they will need to be issued a conference badge to enter inside the premises. The rest of the delegation who is attending virtually from around the world does not need to be registered. They can simply follow the proceedings through the Zoom or webcast. I hope this clarifies. There is one other question. Yvonne is pointing out that when she goes to the registration page, the link to member states, IGOs, and specialized agencies, the apply icon is not activated. It does not appear in blue color. Why is this? If you can explain this again, thank you. And then we have one more question from Pakistan.
Okay, so before going to Yvonne's question, I would like, Yarina, if you could pull up the slide. All right, so I would like to talk about this point, and then I will go back to Yvonne's question. So I take notes. Again, when you start registering, when it's when it's the first time that the system encounters that email address, the system will say there is no Indico user associated with this email address. It's an information. Maybe it's not clear enough. We take notes and we will talk to the developers to see how to improve that or to change that. But when you see that it's only an information, it's not an error message, it just tells you that this email has no accounts yet on Indico or no association with an account on Indico. Or this email will be associated with the Indico account so and so because the account already exists. It's just an information, please just proceed. And I take notes, we'll talk to the developers, we'll see how to change that because we feel like based on your feedback, it's been quite confusing. Noted, point noted. Now to Yvonne's question, what we will do is, Yarina, if you could go back a few slides. So let's say, yes, right here. Come back, yeah, right here. So Yvonne, when you go to the registration page, yes, the button apply is disabled for member states, simply because your workflow is different. For media, journalists can themselves go and register. They fill out the form themselves and then they submit it. For member states, focal points are doing it. So the button is disabled. What you will do is you will have to go to the back end of the registration page to be able to do the on behalf registration. So this is disabled for the public. Now there is an access for focal points. So Yarina, if you could go back again, maybe one, I would say two again, once more, again, yes, again. Sorry, Yarina, I know it's a pain again. Once more. Yes, right here. Come back. From this page, you see the number 2, the pencil on top left. That's the access for focal points to go to the back end. So that's the access that you need. The other access is basically for the public, for anyone, and for individual registration. For focal points, from the registration page here, you click on the pencil on top left, and then you will see that you will have access to the backend. That's where you register your delegates. Yarina, next. And then you will see the menu here. Again, remember, we will share this presentation. So I saw that Yvonne, you were taking pictures. Don't panic, we will share the presentation with you. So you will see the menu on the left. You can click on registration, next. And from here, you select the member state registration, next. And you will see here this kind of view, and from here you click on registrant actions, you will see the button add registrant. That's where you click to start adding your registrants or your delegates. Next. And you will have the form. The form will be displayed. You will see that you can enter upload the photo. You can enter all the information for the delegates that will attend in person, as Lota said. And after that, you submit your registration. And yeah, don't forget the email that you enter here is the delegate's email. If you don't have it, enter the temporary one, first name dot last name of the delegates at melinator.com, and then you submit by clicking on register. Next. I think that's it. And then you will have, once White Hat process your delegates, you will receive the approval, as well as the delegate's email will receive also the approval. Yeah, that's basically it. And you just repeat for each delegate. You fill out the form, you submit. You fill out the form, you submit.
Thank you,
Back to you,
There
Lotta.
are a few additional questions, so maybe we can take those now. There's a message from the Embassy of Pakistan in Beijing asking for embassies should they choose member states. Now, Aaron Gao, who is asking the question from the Pakistani embassy in Beijing. Aaron, I wanted to ask you to please get in touch with the permanent mission of Pakistan in New York. The focal point in New York will have to do the registration through Indico. The embassies in Beijing are not expected to do the registration. So you need to liaise with your colleagues in New York with the mission registration focal point in New York to get your delegation registered for in-person participation. I hope that clarifies. Let me see some other questions that are in the chat box. There's a problem that the Peruvian mission is having. Thais is saying that he or she is a registered e-registration user from the New York mission. They've used the same email and password from the e-delegate platform and emailed the Indico team. So they've emailed your team, Da, to be able to be granted focal point rights, but they've been rejected, saying that the credentials did not match. What can be done to fix this issue?
So, very good point. So what we can do is we will look at because we received the credentials from the protocol office, the list of all the focal points. So before we grant any focal points rights, we make sure that the first name and last name and email of the person are in that list. If it's not there, we say it doesn't match. So what I would say is we can, after the call, we can discuss with YTAC to actually look at your case and see why. Maybe you are not on the list, maybe you are on the list, but we will need to look at it on the case-by-case basis. But basically, this is the workflow. We've received the list of focal points from the protocol, and then coming from e-registration. And then when you ask us to grant you the focal points right on Indico, we look at that list, we make sure that the first name, last name, and email are the same. And then we say, okay, granted. If it's a different name, but the same email, we would say it doesn't match. So maybe that's the case. So we will have to take that offline and see exactly what happens with what happened with the Peruvian mission.
Thank you,
sorry
Da,
about the inconvenience. Yeah.
Thank you, Da, for troubleshooting that bilaterally with the mission concerned. A few other questions are coming up. There is a similar question as we had from Pakistani embassy in Beijing, also the Ukrainian embassy in China is asking whether they have to create the Indico account or whether the permanent mission in New York should do it. The answer is the Indico registration for this conference can only be done by the focal point in New York, the focal point in your mission in New York. So please liaise with that colleague to get your delegation registered. There are a few other questions. Inga-Lena says, thank you for working with the developers to fix that confusing notification about the email. Sophie has a question about, can you please confirm how a delegate will pick up their badge? Are there special requirements for the picture that is submitted? This information, Sophie, is all in the information note that is available on the conference website, but perhaps I can ask either our colleague Waitak or Armin to speak to this point.
Yeah, thank you, Lotta. I can speak to the first question, the question on the pickup for the badge. So the badges will be picked up on Wednesday, the 13th of October at the CNCC at the Convention Center from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's the time that we agreed with the host country for picking up the badges. There needs to be a note verbal sent, and I let Waitak explain this more in detail, that specifies who from the embassy will actually pick up those badges so that we know that only authorized persons can come and collect badges on behalf of the whole embassy delegation. I'll hand this over to Waitak. In terms of the picture requirements, I would like Da to answer that if there are any specific requirements. And I'm not going to answer the last question. That's also a question for Da and Waitak. Thank you.
I think now that the floor is given, and let me just jump in quickly. I just wanted to inform all the missions and all the embassies that the collections of the badges has to be done in, there's nothing in New York, you cannot collect the badges in New York, it can only be collected in Beijing on the ground, on the day specified, just mentioned by Armin. The requirement would be a letter from the permanent mission indicating the name of the collector or the person who is picking up the badges. If in addition, if there are any additional secondary access card that would also be distributed at the same time by our colleague at the badging center. There's one thing that is very important. A mission must take into serious consideration because of the pandemic in Beijing. So there are other additional COVID protocol in place. So that's the reason why the pickup of the badges are kind of tight and strict. So we are appealing to the mission that please comply with the registration requirement and also the collection requirement as specified in the note verbal, which is again a note verbal from the permanent mission in New York, indicating the name and the collectors from the embassy or from members of the delegation. Upon presentation of this letter of note verbal to the badging center, the badges will be released to the delegates or the representative of the embassies. I think all these requirements and steps are actually specified in the note verbal posted on the conference website as well as the protocol website. I think I'm passing it on back to Da on the photo requirement.
And Da, when you are answering the photo requirements, there is actually a question from Luella if uploading photos of delegates is required. So if you can also take that as you talk about the specific.
Very good question. Thank you, Lotta. Thank you, Waitak. Yes, the photo is a mandatory field because the photo will be printed on the badge. And one of the standards for the photo, I would say, is ideally, if you can get the same standard as your passport or national ID, kind of where the face is visible, fully visible. And in the presentation that will be shared with you, you will see some examples of what's expected, but mainly maybe a uniform background and the face is visible, mainly visible. We've received photos of some delegates where they are getting off the plane and you see EasyJet in the background. They are in the true stories in the garden, and then you see so really something more where the face can be recognized and maybe uniform background that would be helpful. Yeah, definitely. The photo is mandatory, yes, for security and also because it will be printed on the badge.
Thank you, Da. There is a question from Zhang to everyone. Some countries haven't got focal point. How to register in this situation? Now, the permanent missions in New York should all have focal points for registration, and all countries have most countries have permanent missions in New York. However, if there is a issue with a country not having a focal point, I would suggest you can write an email to Waitak Chua, and we can work this out bilaterally with you.
Lotta, if I may, I can just jump in quickly about these questions. I do realize that a few missions in New York, apparently, I think right now they do not have any e-registration focal points. Now, if your country is sending a delegation and you do not have an e-registration focal point in New York, please, there is a procedure. We can grant you the access to the e-registration account quickly. There is a small procedure. We just need a letter from the ambassador appointing the mission staff as the e-registration focal point. Just give us a letter and also the SG39 form. We will give you a priority and process your account request, hopefully within the same day. As soon as you have the e-registration account, then you can proceed to create your account in Indico and continue with the registration with Indico for the conference.
So essentially, if there is an issue with no focal point identified, please reach out to Waitak and she will give you the paperwork you would need to fill out. There is again a question from the Tajikistan embassy in Beijing. So for the in-person, their ambassador will be attending the event. The registration in Indico, the embassy in Beijing does not need to do it. That's correct. You will not do the registration for your ambassador for in-person attendance. You need to be in touch with your colleagues in New York to do that registration for you. And you need to provide your colleague in New York with all the relevant information, the picture, etc. Colleagues, I think in the interest of time, we need to go back to Da now to see if he has any additional slides. And then I have an important point to make at the end. Again, as a reminder, we will share the PowerPoint presentation with everyone. There are a few bilateral problem cases that your team would need to work on bilaterally with the missions, with in particular Peru. And it seems Yvonne from Indonesia continues to have a problem. So if you can also troubleshoot bilaterally with Yvonne, that would be appreciated. But Da, let's go. And if any other mission has any problems, we have an email address to Da's team that you can shoot an email, and Da and his colleagues will help you. But Da, let's now go back to your presentation.
Thank you, Lotta. The presentation is almost over. I just want to share with you the email. So Yarina, back to you. So let's go to the last slide. Yeah, so come back. So basically, that's my last slide that I wanted to share with you. Now, the email we can put the email in the chat, but we have it in the first slide. It's the same email that you use to request focal points access. That's the support that you use. So Yarina, we could go back, I think it was the second slide or something like that. At least it was in step 1. So here it is, support accreditation at un.org. Go a couple of slides further. I think I have it somewhere else. Again, next. Yeah, right here. So this is the email. So you, again, as a reminder, you will have this presentation. So the support.accreditation@un.org. If there is any issue, any question, you can send it to that, the Indico support, to that email address, definitely. Back to you, Lotta. Thank you, Yarina.
Thank you so much, colleagues, and Da, especially for this information. I think it has been extremely useful to see the step-by-step process. And again, for all those colleagues who are joining from Beijing, from the embassies in Beijing, please do liaise with your mission colleagues in New York to have your delegation registered for in-person participation. Now, I want to draw colleagues, everyone's attention that we have just been informed by the host country for some additional COVID-19 related requirements that in-person participants would need to follow. I have shared the link to these details in the chat box. This is also posted on the conference website under registration and logistics. But I would also like to draw your attention to these additional COVID-19 related measures that need to be taken when participating in person. So thank you, colleagues. It has been a very rich discussion, very illuminating discussion. I think, Da, you also have gotten some useful feedback about Indico, which is much appreciated. Colleagues, the Indico team will be there to help you throughout this registration process. Just to remind you that the registration for in-person participation will close on 9 October. So there are still a few days left. And DA's team will be on standby in Geneva to troubleshoot together with you to solve any issues that you have. So with these remarks, may I again thank you, Da, very much, you and your team and YTAC and all colleagues who joined, and in particular our mission colleagues who joined, and for raising those important questions. And I think you have raised them really on behalf of many others who have been joining this call. So the PowerPoint will be posted today on the website, and we would invite you to refer to it to refresh your memory of what Da has outlined. We wish you a wonderful rest of the day, and we thank you again for your participation. Bye-bye.